Annunciation Radio presents Say Yes to Life with Peter Range, Senior Fellow for Strategic Initiatives at the Center for Christian Virtue.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Say Yes to Life, where we learn to embrace our Catholic faith in the secular world. I'm your host, Peter Range, Senior Fellow for the Center for Christian Virtue, and welcome to show number 467 as we continue to fight for every single human life, born, preborn, and yours in our world today. On today's show, we're very excited to welcome, and I should have found out how to pronounce his last name before we started, Pontarelli, Joey Pontarelli. Joey, you can correct me. Oh, I got 2 thumbs up. All right, that's good. We got him on Zoom today. But Joey is an author, speaker, and podcast host whose online content has helped hundreds of thousands worldwide. After experiencing his parents' divorce, he now mentors teens and young adults from divorced and broken families, helping them heal and break the cycle. Endorsed by Jason Everett, who we love, Dr. Bob Schutz, who we love, Archbishop Aquila, who we love. Joey has spoken across the U.S. and internationally, including at Seek, Franciscan University, and more. The only person we haven't had on the show, we got to have Archbishop Aquila. Make that happen, Sean. All right, Joey's book, It's Not Your Fault, has helped thousands of readers. His podcast, Restored, Helping Children of Divorce, has over 125,000 downloads. I've never seen anything of that nature here at Say Yes to Life, but he's a graduate of Franciscan University and Benedictine College. Joey lives in Pennsylvania, the great state. That's where my father's from. And my dad used to say, Pennsylvania, it's God's country. Nonetheless, he lives in God's country with his wife, Bridget, and their kids. On today's show, we'll be talking about his life, his work, and how we heal this broken culture. But first, let's go ahead and take 180 seconds around Ohio and the nation to talk about what's happening in the pro-life movement and the news. First, from the Hill. The Pentagon is preparing to deploy about 2,000 U.S. troops from the Army's 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East, bolstering the U.S. military presence in the region and providing more options for President Trump, a source familiar with the matter who spoke on condition of anonymity to share internal military deliberations, told The Hill on Tuesday. The number of troops could change as the verbal order was given in the last 24 hours, the source stressed. Friends, President Trump has verbally signaled the war may be dying down, but when you get involved in actions like this, it can be hard to stop what has been started. So please, first and foremost, pray for the safety, pray for peace, pray for the safety of our service members and a quick end to the conflict. I said it many times on the show, and I'll continue to repeat it. St. John Paul II said, war is a defeat for humanity. No matter where you fall politically, we don't like to see bombs being dropped on people, all right? All right, second, from the State House News Bureau, a Republican-sponsored bill here in Ohio would require women who get an abortion-induced medication to receive information on how to reverse that process after taking the first pill of a 2-pill dose. It is similar to bills that have been introduced in the House before, but backers of this bill said that 8,000 abortions have been safely reversed when women change their minds. Representative Jennifer Gross from Westchester said the bill would provide information to patients who might change their minds after taking that first dose. Of course, we here at Say Yes to Life are big supporters of the abortion pill reversal process. I encourage you to go back in our archives to actually hear the story of Sierra McLeod, who came on and shared her story. She's at Heartbeat International Conference right now in Cincinnati, sharing her story as well. But the reversal process works. Progesterone works to help mothers who are pregnant or who maybe took that first pill and said, you know what, God, I made a mistake. Can you help me out here? So if you have a local pregnancy center, encourage them to become an APR or abortion pill reversal site as well. All right, third and finally, purchase your tickets. You're running out of time here, folks. But Saturday, April 11th, the Center for Christian Virtue is hosting our Columbus Gala featuring Scott Jennings. Scott, he's a fighter, conservative political commentator on CNN. Yes, those things actually do exist, but he's known for his sharp insights and thought-provoking analysis. You can find out more at ccv.org/Columbus Gala. Sean, one day they'll be saying, come here, Peter Range, speak. Nah, well, they probably won't be. All right, anyway, it's now time to welcome to the show Joey Pontarelli. And the good Italian name. He's an author, he's a speaker, he's a podcast host whose online content has helped hundreds of thousands worldwide. And I think his work, at the end of the day, it's about supporting, rebuilding families. And, you know, one of the groups that we're working with, Communio, here in the state of Ohio, to focus on marriage and family, focus on healthy relationships, focus on stopping divorces from happening in the first place, because we know and believe and understand and appreciate the family. The future of humanity passes by the way of the family. So if we don't get this right, it's really hard to recover. But Joey, I wonder if we could just start with your story. Tell us a little bit about your family, your life, your faith walk, and what led you to your current mission and ministry.
Yeah, Peter, great to be with you and all your listeners. It all started, I would say, when on one of the most painful days of my life. I was about 11 years old at the time when my parents separated. The police were involved. It was really a messy situation. I remember when my parents broke the news that they were getting divorced, my whole world just shattered. And I remember being an 11-year-old boy, I didn't know what to do with that news. And so I just hid in the closet and cried. And sitting in that closet, I couldn't have put it in towards them, but I felt abandoned, unwanted, like I wasn't good enough. And in the months and years that followed, I dealt with all sorts of pain and problems. I dealt with emotional problems, anxiety, depression, loneliness, a lot of anger for me as a boy. I dealt with relationship struggles. I remember Peter swearing after my parents split that I will never get married, because if this is where love and marriage lead, like why in the world would I want to put myself through that? And so, in the years that followed, when it came to relationships, I struggled a lot. I fell into unhealthy relationships, felt super lost, like incompetent at building love, and just had a lot of fear around all of that. But the other area where I struggled was with bad habits, just being in so much pain. I tried to numb my pain with pleasure. So I fell into pornography. That became my drug of choice after a sports buddy introduced me to it. But even as a young man, like I knew that I wanted to be happy, and all that wasn't making me happy. And so I needed to change. Two things really helped. I heard Jason Everett speak, who you mentioned before. And if for anyone not familiar, Jason Everett is a speaker and author who talks about love, relationship, sexuality, especially the virtue of chastity. And it just took his message and put it into action in my life. I got porn out of my life. I started living purity. That helped a ton. Also got new friends. The sports buddies I was hanging around with weren't good for me. These new friends were like genuinely happy people, and I wasn't, but I wanted to be. And so I just started to be like them. And I realized that the source of their joy was their Catholic faith. And so I started to pray, to build virtue, to just see God's plan for my life. And that really helped too. But moving into high school and even college, even though my life was better in so many ways, I still felt broken. And so I knew I needed to heal. And so looking around for some help, I was pretty shocked that there was nothing practical and specific for a young person like me who came from a broken family on how to do that. And so over the years, after, trying to like piece all this together myself, we kind of figured like, what if we were able to help that younger me do this with less effort? And part of the motivation, to be honest with you, is I had close friends of mine who came from really broken families, who really struggled in serious ways. We're talking, things like suicide and stuff like that. My siblings, I've seen them struggle too. And so just over the years of seeing that and then reading the research, I just understood like this is a huge problem. And one of the things I've been really thinking about a lot lately is that there's been multiple studies, but there's one study in particular that found if you come from a divorced family, you're 2 to 3 times more likely to get divorced yourself. This is like true across 15 different countries. That's insane. 2 to 3 times more likely to get divorced than your average person who doesn't come from a broken family. And so what I've been obsessing over lately is like, how do you prevent that? How do you prevent that? And so that's something that we're working on now. But that all led me to start the apostolate that we'll be talking about, Restored. And so after some time in the business world, had some, by God's grace, some success there, learned a bunch of really useful things. I was like, I think God wants me to use those skills in this mission to help these young people who come from broken families not repeat their parents' story.
Joey, just really interested in, you mentioned 2 to 3 times more likely to get divorced if you come from a divorced family. Does research dig into why, or just in your own observations, why would that be? What is it that coming from a broken home might lead to your own broken home?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. There's a quote that says, pain that is not transformed is transmitted. I think it's a big part of it. It's like hurt people. We tend to repeat the brokenness that we came from. And there's some deep psychology at play, but when it comes to marriage in particular, I think it's really simple. It's like learn any skill in your life, you have to learn how to do it, right? Relationships involve skills that are more than skills, that we would call them virtues. They involve certain virtues. And if you acquire those virtues, then the chance of you having, and you put them into action every day, the chance of you having a good marriage, a good, healthy relationship are much higher than if you don't have those virtues. What we see is that young people, they go through these really painful and even traumatic experiences in their families. So they're carrying around all this untreated brokenness. Then to numb the pain that they're experiencing, they go to all these bad habits, whether it's drinking or porn or binging on social video games, like the list goes on. Then they go into the relationships and try to build some form of love, even if they're afraid of marriage, which so many of the young people who come from broken families are. They try to build something, but it ends up being really unhealthy. And then if they're brave enough to attempt marriage, then that can turn into like a really broken marriage, which results in an unhealthy family. And so then the cycle just repeats itself. They wound their kids go through this again. So I think that that's a big part of it. It's that the family, as John Paul II said, is meant to be the school of love. And so if that was your training in relationships and it was so poor, then you're just going to kind of magnetically be pulled in the direction of repeating what you saw. We're just, even babies, mirror neurons are, parts of our brain that allow us to like repeat, essentially mimic and repeat the behavior that we see around us. They're part of the mechanism at play. And that's true in relationships. And so essentially the short version of it is we observed our parents on a subconscious level, how they did relationships, and we tend to do the same in our own lives. And I think it's a big reason why so many young people end up repeating that cycle in their own marriages, unfortunately, even if they have the best of intentions of not doing that.
Yeah, boy, listening to you talk, I'm thinking about my own kids and my wife and the discussions we have, and we're like, gosh, we really don't want to mess up our kids. And so it's really important for us to kind of go through our own walking of just healing our own woundedness so we don't transmit any of these wounds to our kids. But praise God that, even as Psalm 27, even if mother or father forsake me, the Lord will take them up. We can hope and believe and know that even if we're terrible parents, God can come in and save the day. Let's talk a little bit about Restored, because you're working with individuals who have come from broken relationships. What do you actually practically offer through the ministry?
Yeah, no, I'd love to get into that. One thing I wanted to say, though, just to kind of put a little bit of a closure on my story and touch on what you just said. So by God's grace, like I said, I was able to get porn out of my life. I was able to get to a point through a lot of therapy and spiritual direction and mentorship, especially, to where I no longer struggle with bigger, constant emotional problems like I did before. And I've been married about 8 years now. We have 3 kids, and family life is hard. Marriage is hard. Definitely have had my struggles there. So my life isn't easier doing all of this, marriage, being a dad, but it's so much better and I love it. And so that's, just wanted to kind of say that that's the happier ending to the story. And so I think that's essentially what we want to do. Like, I'm not the perfect model. I've had my struggles, but we want to help young people to go from this place of like really broken, like I mentioned, of having this untreated trauma, lacking the virtues and living in vice, to then healing the brokenness, building those virtues so that they can go on and build healthy relationships, strong marriages, and holy families. That's the whole goal behind everything I mentioned. And we're not going to be perfect. Like you said, we will mess up our kids, actually, to some extent. Hopefully we can minimize it, but there's no parent that I know of who's done this perfectly. And so the more important thing is that when we do make mistakes and we do wound our kids, that we're there to repair, to mend it. And that's what's so often missing in so many of these broken families, is there's not that repair, there's not that reconciliation. And if you just do that, like, you're winning. Like, it's so good. So to get to your question, though, the main thing we do is we produce content that mentors these young people through all the challenges, the pain, the problems that they experience in their broken families, and especially equips them to not repeat their parents' story in their own relationships and future marriage. We have a podcast, we have a book, we do speaking engagements, things like that. But at the end of the day, we're focused on teenagers and young adults who come from broken families. Just to define broken families, anyone family that's divorced, maybe the parents are separated, or maybe they're still together, but there's just a lot of dysfunction at home. I've heard some of the young people we walk with say, my parents are married, but they act divorce. And so that's really the young people. We're going after teenagers and young adults, so anyone from like 13 to 35 or so. And we're just, again, trying to help them to heal the brokenness and to build virtue so they can go on and not repeat their parents' story, and instead build strong, healthy, holy relationships.
Well, not to get into the weeds, but how do you finance this? Is this a nonprofit where you're just accepting donations, or is it something you charge for those courses? How does that kind of financial piece, because there might be kids that are looking for it, like, yeah, actually I could use this, but maybe they don't have the money to pay for it. Yeah,
no, we give everything away for free. And so, like, even the book, like, we've priced it as, like, we don't make any money on the book, basically. So it's like a $10 book at this time. Maybe we'll have to raise that in the future, but that's it. We, give all our content away for free. We have a bunch of really generous donors who come alongside us and help us do that. But so many young people come from broken families. One of the outcomes of divorce is that wealth gets destroyed. And so a lot of times, like, families, young people in these situations don't have the money to afford this, but if they have the willingness to put in time and effort, then we're more than happy to work with them. And we have a lot of people who are behind that vision as well. So we're working on some new things as well. We're building a program, which I can maybe get into more later, that is going to essentially act as like a 6-week formation kind of boot camp, offering these young people the skills and the space, more importantly, the time and the space and the guidance to find healing based on like really solid scientific like healing techniques that all align with like Catholic anthropology. Like that's true to what we believe as Catholics, not any weird psychology. And we're gonna, involve therapists and things like that in that one. So that's really exciting. That's something new on the cusp. But our audience wants some sort of healing program, so we're working on that now. But yeah, that no, we've had really generous people make it possible for us to do this work.
Praise God. And if you want to learn more about the ministry, we're talking with Joey Pontarelli here, restoredministry.com. Joey, I just want to make sure I get that website right so that people, if they're listening, they can go check out what you got.
Yep, restoredministry.com. All of our resources are on there. Podcast episodes. Our podcast is our most popular resource. The book would probably be right after that, but then we got a bunch of freebies on there as well, stuff we give away, articles, things like that I could maybe mention later.
Well, let's talk about your book. It's Not Your Fault. It brings to mind one of my favorite movies, Good Will Hunting, where Robin Williams, God rest his soul, talking, and he's like, "It's not your fault," and it's such a powerful part of that particular film. But what are some major themes or your hopes that individuals from divorced families will receive from reading the book?
Yeah, a great question. Two things. One is I really just want them to build a better future than their past. So one of the things we often tell the young people is like, you are not doomed to repeat your parents' story, to repeat your family's dysfunction. That's the ultimate outcome that I want. Like as you said before, Peter, we need really solid, beautiful marriages and families if we want to transform culture. And we really need, our culture is so broken right now. And so we just start on the level of the individual. And the hope is that to like equip them, build them up, form them well, so that they can then go on and build those healthy relationships, holy families. And so that's one of the outcomes that we want for people. The second one is it's just really messy. There's so many challenges when you come from a broken family, so much pain, so many problems you have to face and solve. And so we want to help guide and mentor them through all of that. So whether it's like, it's the holidays, it's that time of the year when I have to figure out, am I going to spend time with mom's side or dad's side? Like that's really messy. So we offer them some guidance to that. For Catholics in particular, since we're talking to that audience, one of the questions that sometimes comes up is like, hey, if my parents get an annulment, does that make me illegitimate? So that's one of the things the book touches on. But it's a collection of 33 questions and answers, like really short Q&A format. You don't need to read the book cover to cover. You can look at the contents and say, oh, I'm struggling in my relationship with my mom and my dad. Here's a few questions related to that. Let me look through those. Or I have a lot of emotional problems I'm dealing with, a lot of anxiety. Like, what can I do to deal with that? And so we just offer some simple guidance, some practical advice, and then lead them to better, deeper resources that can handle it more holistically, because it's just a book. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do, is kind of be somewhat of paramedics. Like we help them as much as we can in the field, but I'm not a therapist. I don't pretend to be. And so we want to then hand them off to the doctors, the people who are more equipped to help them with certain things. But that's it. So it covers everything from, how to build healthy relationships if you didn't see that growing up, how to heal your relationship with mom and dad. Decisions are a particular struggle for our audience, like a lot of analysis paralysis and a lot of fear just overall. And so we talk through like, how do you, make a good decision when it comes to, moving forward in your life, maybe moving out of your house and building your own life when maybe you feel the pull to be there for your family because things are really broken. Maybe your little siblings are still at home. So just a lot of like unique challenges that we just walk through. Hey, here's some practical guidance advice from people, who've been through it, and people who, maybe are experts on the topic.
I'm starting to get the sense that your materials are helpful, not just for children of divorced couples, but for everybody, because we all come from, to a certain extent, from families that have wounds and are in need of healing, especially to, again, not transmit those wounds to the next generation. I'd like to go back just for a second, if we could, to your own kind of experience with divorce. Sure. Curious about, if you ended up living with your mom and dad. And then let me get into this next question because it's somewhat related. But, here in Ohio, our Hope in a Future report that we put out looking at marital structure in our state discovered that 42% of our children grow up without their dad in the home. And by the time they're 17, that rises to 53%. Now, that really matters from every perspective, and you just look at one slice of the pie from a poverty perspective. Those families without the dad present in the home, their poverty rate, it's 45%. Compared to an intact home, the poverty rate is just 7%. So you talk about divorce destroying wealth. We've laid that out here in the state of Ohio. I'm just curious from your perspective, though, what was your experience? Did you end up living with mom or dad, and how did that work out? But what does a young man or young woman, if they don't have the father in particular, I mean, that's what I'm interested in because I'm a dad myself, but if they don't have the father present in the home, what does that do to them? I mean, you can speak to the emotional, psychological, physical, whatever it is, but curious your own personal experience and then what you've seen through the research.
Yeah, no, great question. I lived with mom. We did the visitation thing as well, but mostly with mom. And it can't be overstated what you said. That's so wild when it comes to fathers in the home and how much of a crisis that is. I've heard incarceration rates, like men especially going to prison, goes way up if you don't have a father at home. And so there's so many problems that, we can lay out. But I think for young men in particular, why does that affect them that way? I think, like we were saying before, when it comes to parenting, when it comes to like learning how to do life well, so much more is caught than taught. Like we just pick up what's around us. Like we model, we mimic what's modeled around us. And so I think that's the case for men too. And so that's why, a lot of people have talked about the whole theme when you have maybe inner city families that are broken, dad's not living at home, the kids gravitate towards gangs because they find like an area where they can maybe have that father figure. They can have that feeling of a family, so to speak. And so I've heard it said that gang leaders are some of the best like leaders out there because they give people a place where they belong and they're motivated to do these horrible things. And so, so I think that's a big part of it is like, as a young man, you learn how to be a man from the men in your life, especially your father. And so when that's ripped away from you, it's like, where do you turn? It's like, well, maybe you turn to movies and porn and social media and you get that idea of like what manhood looks like. And so that's obviously super, super toxic. On the female side, young women, I mean, I think I've heard it said so often that you end up, a young woman will end up marrying a man like her father. That there's that tendency at least. And you kind of get conditioned to believing, well, this is how I deserve to be treated, how that father treats you. And if dad abandoned you or neglected you, then you might internalize that belief and think like, okay, I kind of deserve to be neglected or abandoned. And so like that doesn't lead to a healthy relationship. There's all these other statistics. I don't know all of them super well, but I think there's something to be said, like even it affects our biology. I heard someone saying something about girls today that's partly has to do with all the chemicals in our environment, but they have, especially in like homes that are broken, they get their periods earlier and that ends up bringing on a bunch of other potential like problems. So there's a lot to be said there, but I think overall it's like on the men's side, we lose that kind of mentor in a way from our fathers. On the women's side, we don't really, the females don't really learn how to, they deserve to be treated, or, they learn they deserve to be treated maybe the wrong way. And so, so thankfully there is a happier ending though. I know it all sounds kind of heavy and dark, but on my side, going back to my story, a lot of the absence of my father was mitigated through mentors. So I had really amazing mentors. You mentioned Jason Everett. He was one of them over the years from afar. There were others, some from afar, some up close, who I just learned so much from. And more importantly, just received a lot of love and affirmation from that gave me the confidence, the courage, and even the formation to be able to then one day do, by God's grace, the things I've been blessed to do, get married, build a career, all that good stuff. So I think that's huge. You can have that kind of, nothing will make up for your biological father being missing, but you at least can have that experience of having a male figure in your life who can teach you how to be a man or show you what you deserve as a woman. So those are a few things. And so I think that would be my encouragement to any young man or young woman listening, or anyone who knows one, is like, try to find that father figure who they can have in their life.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I wonder after the show if you would call Jason Everett for me and ask him if he'd be my mentor. We've had him on the show before, but I'm a little too shy to be like, hey, Jason. But that's pretty cool. He's and praise God that, I'm sure so many young men that he goes around the country and the world to talk to, they're probably impacted and like, oh, like that's what a real man looks like. That's how he behaves. That's how he should, what he should or should not be looking at, and so on and so forth. So praise God for people like yourself and for Jason and for others that are living the way that God has called us to be as men. It's amazing the impact we can have. We got about 2 minutes left in the show, but I'd love to get to this. How or why did divorce become so prevalent in our culture, and how do we return to a culture that honors and values marriage as a sacred covenant made for the whole of life? You got 2 minutes to answer a very deep question, but I've full confidence, Joey, that you can do it. So go ahead.
Yeah. So ironically, the prevalence of divorce came from the sexual revolution. In particular, it actually came from California when Ronald Reagan was the governor. It's a lot of people don't know this, but in 1969, Reagan struggled in one of his, I guess, first marriage. I don't know which marriage it was. He wanted to get divorced when this idea of no fault divorce, meaning you don't need to prove that your spouse is abusing you or cheating on you or anything like that. You can just get divorced for any reason. It's like, oh, we just don't get along. Irreconcilable differences is the kind of term used in court. There's no reason that you need to get divorced. And so that was proposed. All the states opposed it. Then Reagan signed it into law in 1970. And then, as so often happens, that went all across the country. Now every state has no fault divorce. So that's a big reason why. And so to kind of build up beautiful marriages and families, I think the thing we need to do is actually the healing piece. I think so often after sin, the things that hold us back most from becoming who God wants us to be is our untreated brokenness. And so, like I said before, pain that is not healed is just transmitted. And so if we want to build beautiful marriages and families, we need to heal. And then the second thing I would say is we need to just surround ourselves, just like the pro athletes do, with amazing coaches and people who are really good at love and marriage. And when you just spend time in the presence of a healthy marriage and family, it's incredibly inspiring. And then you learn practically, oh, that's how you disagree and that's how you love each other. And so that's what I would say.